Well, good morning, everyone. I am blessed and honored to have Deanna with us today. Deanna is a retired Chief Master Sergeant. She's also a visionary and educator. She has like so many great, amazing projects that she's working on, but she's also the CEO of Authentic Fusion LLC. And so she is a service based, disabled veteran owned consulting firm that's really redefining what it means to lead with authenticity and purpose. And her and I met because she is leading SheLeads DC in November. And so I wanted to invite her on to talk about her journey and really understand the power behind all that she's creating in this space and women empowerment, but also leadership. And so, again, thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited to get to ask you where everything began.
Awesome. I'm so glad to be here, Candace. Thank you so much. I am so grateful that we got a chance to connect because I think that, She Leads is going to be amazing. I'm so grateful to have you a part of it as well. So thank you for having me this morning on your show.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So you served at the highest levels of leadership in the military and the government and academia. Like, there's not a sector you haven't touched. But what experiences have most shaped your understanding about authentic leadership?
I think that in my military career, and I was explaining to you earlier, I literally graduated from high school in May and I was in basic training by June. And so that leadership journey throughout my military career, just having opportunities that different leaders of mine gave me. But at the end of my career, the kind of the strategic portion, when being hired by different commanders, they gave me the autonomy to lead. And I think that that
Mm.
was most important. I had a medical background. However, that did not make a difference. I think that those senior leaders, saw something in me, saw something that they wanted me to be able to share with the installations that I was a part of. And so that autonomy to lead, I think for the military, really shaped authenticity for me. And then moving on into government, when I kind of transitioned, culture was super important to me. And so being able to be a part of organizations that had a good culture, that was important because you get to choose. In the military, you're handed a culture, but within government, you get to choose. And there were some that I had to walk away from, but there are some that have just been amazing that I'm still very much so involved in. And so that's been great for government. And then when you move on to academia, uh, education has just always been a passion of mine. So, with the university that I'm a part of, which is Columbia Southern University, the culture there and how we are able to work with our students, the flexibility that we're able to give our students is super important. When I was working on my degree, you had a paper due by midnight, and that was just it. You're going to get a zero if you don't get it in, by midnight. But there's just flexibility. We understand, that life is happening, and family. They have families, and so we work with our students. And so I think being able to bring that authenticity from myself and just really work with the students in academia, all of those things have really shaped kind of who I am and how I look at authenticity in those three elements.
Yeah, I know. I love it. And, before we even dive in further, can you tell people a little bit about your background?
Yes. Goodness, where do I start? So, when I started out in the military, I was in healthcare administration. And there's kind of two routes that you can take. You can go a functional, which is kind of staying within your career field, or you can take a leadership route. And so, through great mentorship, I was able to take that leadership route and I progressed and I spent 28 years in the Air Force. My last assignment was at the Pentagon, where I was the chief for enlisted voluntary education. So that's essentially working with the entire Air Force enlisted population and ensuring that they get their bachelor's, their master's, their doctorate, certificates, skill bridge program, um, transition assistance program. There was just a lot that I did. But I also got a chance to fulfill a command chief role, if you will, where I was in charge of health, morale, education, leadership development for that enlisted population at two important bases. So I spent time doing that, and then I transitioned out of the military in 2023, and I started working with government contracting. So, working as a project manager for a couple of firms, and just really learning a lot, and being able to still work with leadership development. Where currently we teach, facilitate GS15s how to put their packages together to become SESs, so senior executive service. So that's a passion of mine, writing the curriculum for that, and also teaching that 3-day course. Outside of that, I also am an adjunct professor for Columbia Southern University, where I teach military studies. And so I do that part time. And then lastly, um, I also have Authentic Fusion, which is where I do the government contracting through that business. But I'm also the director for military families, family programs, and pathways for Columbia Southern University. So tie all those things together. I'm a mom. I have 4 wonderful children. I live in the DMV area. I like to travel, and I am an America's Team fan like everyone else. So,
I love this. Well, and I mean, you guys are doing really big things at Columbia University, and
yeah,
you've been able to help militaries worldwide. I mean, securing over 19 million in funding, that's
yes,
unheard of. Like, I'm just mind blown by the impact that that brings military families. A lot of people don't understand the different complexities that arise when you are a military family. There's just different, hurdles that we have to face, and I think being able to give them the gift of education and different support is so vital
yes,
for their well-being, especially as a military spouse when you're transitioning every couple of years. The ability to have something of your own and to be able to carry that with you goes beyond what anybody can imagine. Um,
totally.
so okay. So Authentic Fusion is such a powerful name for your business. And what does that exactly mean? Like when you're bridging that personally and professionally?
So it was important to me because I think throughout my military career, we have standards. We have, different types of leaders. You have introverts, you have extroverts, you have, those that have been leading for a long time, those that have not. But I think that some of the feedback that I got throughout my military career is just remaining true to myself. And so, whether that was how I did a presentation, how I dealt with the airmen that were surrounded by me, how I carried myself professionally, I'm always going to be D. And it's so funny because my name, obviously is Diena Mosely, but I always get referred to as D Mosely. And so just always being myself. So I think that's the personal side of the Authentic Fusion. But as I transition out again with education, leadership development remaining something that's close to my heart and very passionate about. Right now, I teach leaders how to lead. We have individuals that may graduate from college, and they get a wonderful, amazing paying job because they're just good at what they do. But they may lack leadership skills, right? And so, how to take care of people. So, that's a passion of mine. And then, curriculum development is something that I also enjoy doing. And then, just getting with organizations and businesses and bringing, their employees together to solve problems, to maybe deal with conflict management, to just bring new ideas to the company. So, fusing all of those things together with being who you are, your true self and authenticity, is kind of the where I get Authentic Fusion from. So fusing all the things that I'm passionate about together and just being myself.
Yeah, no, I love that you said to be yourself, especially in context with the military. I think
Mhm.
that's really interesting, and I want to dive into that.
Okay.
And when you said in leadership, how to take care of people. So those are two big things that stood out to me. How was it that you were able to really come into your own identity being in the military? Because I think that's something that kind of can either really shine or that can get compartmentalized along the way.
Yes, and I think that's where you really have to. One, you still need leadership, you still need mentorship, but you have to remain true to yourself. I don't think that any job that I got while I was in the military was just because I was a brainiac behind, all the tactical pieces of completing the mission. I think that it had just a lot to do with how you take care of people.
Mm,
And so, a good friend of mine, a good leader, a good mentor of mine told me a long time ago, and it's something that I repeat and I live by to this day. You have to connect before you pull. And I think that's with anything. Before you even put your hands together and you want to pull them apart, you have to make a connection.
yeah.
And so I think that that's the same thing with leading people is have you connected in some shape, form, or fashion by conversation or just, getting to know them before you start to pull and need things and tell them, I need you to do this, do that. Connection is huge. So I think that those things have really shaped who I am as a leader. And I think that if I can connect with one person and make a change that for them or help them accomplish a goal, then for me that's amazing. And I think since I've transitioned out of the military, I still have lots of individuals that still reach out, and ask questions. And so I have to tell myself, well, maybe I was doing something right. So yes, all of that comes into play.
Oh my gosh. So, what you're saying and what I see in the newer generation is that, and I like to refer to it as even community building within everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
Because whether you own a business, whether you're working for someone, when you build community and that deeper connection of actually treating humans like human beings, you
Yes.
go so much further because you have higher retention, you have deeper connections and understanding, and you have the opportunity to grow and learn from those very people. And the younger generation almost demands that. I think that they're like, yeah, no, I'm shutting off at 4 o'clock. If that's my scheduled time out, I'm done. And they actually really value genuine connection over just very transactional leadership. And so I think it's beautiful that you're helping leaders that are coming in with that, because a lot of leaders just get handed the position and don't know what to do. And then they fear, if I say I don't know what I need to do, then I'm not going to have this position. So I think it's great that you're kind of putting it out there like, hey, leaders, it's okay if you need help because we all do.
We all
So
do, no matter what level of leadership that you're at. You're absolutely correct.
yeah, well, and speaking of your transition, going from this super structured format, which kind of government more than likely has the same structure, but how did you navigate that transition into entrepreneurship and find your unique leadership voice amongst all of that?
So I'll tell you, transition, the very first thing that I will say is not easy,
Mm,
right? Especially when you've been dedicated to something for so long. It's not easy. Pushing the button, as we, affectionately call it, is not easy. And so when I finally did and got, past the fact, okay, it's coming to an end. I am retiring now. It's time to transition. The first question that, everyone asks you is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, you know what? I really, I just want to breathe, for a minute, and I think that that's okay as well. But I jumped back into work, and I enjoyed what I was doing, but I still, again, had a passion for leadership development and, just being myself, kind of bringing myself to the table. So I think with a lot of mentorship, because like you just mentioned, leaders, you haven't arrived, right? And so you absolutely are still learning every day. And so I had great mentors that were kind of behind me and helping me. I mean, literally step by step, deep, press this button, go to this website, do this, do that. So just having those individuals in my life, I think helped with the transition into entrepreneurship. Um, Again, not an easy feat, but I think that you just have to have individuals in your life. And I knew that I was capable. I knew kind of what I could bring to the table, but we always have that hesitation, and sometimes you need that extra push, and to do it in your own time. Because again, if you try to get out there and rush and be like someone else, people are going to see right through it. And you said
absolutely.
that about the younger generation, they're gonna clock out at 4 and they appreciate, someone that is genuine. And so, yeah, you have to be yourself, or people will see right through it. So
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, and the support from your network and mentors and again, what I keep hearing you say is like don't be afraid to have support, which so many people fear that. They do you know in your experience, what do you think that fear comes from?
I honestly think, and and I know that we're going to talk about it at the conference, at the summit. But I do think that it's a little bit of imposter syndrome, and we really have to learn what that really and truly means. And spoiler alert, I'm not going to go there because I know that we are going to learn all about it. But I think it's self doubt that comes
Mhm.
into play. What are people going to say?
Yeah,
And my podcast, or my website, my business doesn't look like everyone else's, and it's not, that well defined yet. I think all of those things come into play, for self-doubt. But again, that's why I go back to authenticity. Who are you?
right.
You don't have to have a consulting company. If you've always had a passion for, making hair bows, or baking cookies, like, let that shine through. Be who you are, because again, people will respect you for who you are, and the humility and authenticity that you bring to the table.
Absolutely. And I won't spoil it too much, but I'm excited to dive into the talk on imposter syndrome because there's so many roots to it. And sometimes it is asking and requiring us to grow in some way. And so it's how do we identify when it's like, actually, I just need to grow a little and I need to get a little bit of support versus I have the skill, I know the thing, I'm just nervous because I can't anticipate what the outcome is. And even like back to what you were saying, the clarity piece I think is what a lot of entrepreneurs miss. I can't tell you how many come to me and they're like, man, I spent all this money on a business coach and I don't even know what I'm doing. And I'm like, yeah, because you're trying to figure out what it is you actually want to do because you're
Yeah,
like told to build all the things. But
right.
like one of the things that I'm excited to talk about at the conference is like how to identify, where is it that you're wanting to go? Because I think oftentimes we have these external expectations that we
Yes.
think we have to do it this way when it's not in alignment. And so that's why we hesitate to do this or that. So,
Mhm.
and I'm really excited and thankful. Like when we had our conversation, I was like, look, I know everyone talks about imposter syndrome, but let me
Yeah,
tell you, I don't think they talk about it like this. And so you're like,
that's right.
so
Mhm.
yeah. So, okay. So let's talk about the conference. In founding this and putting this, it's SheLeads DC P3 Summit.
Yes.
So you're creating the space for women to have these conversations that are often avoided in leadership circles altogether. Like people just don't want to look at them. And what kinds of conversations do you feel women need? And I want to double up because I do this really often. What made you want to put it together first, and then what do you think they need to hear?
So, what brought on She Leads DC during my military time, and then just across industry as well? I always saw, if I will, a bromance taking place, right? And so I would go to conferences, and we'd all be together, leaders, males and females together. No worries there. But after we would get finished with the business of the day, I would see the gentlemen getting together and just really brainstorming, whether it was over a cigar, or just a conversation, getting together and brainstorming about life in the military, but also when you transition, business decisions. I mean, they were really having these great conversations. And on the women's side, we would get together, but it was more so for a lunch, a brunch, a breakfast, spa, something, to that effect, versus, just really talking about mentorship and, the after of the military. And so I was fortunate enough to be invited to and be able to share with the gentlemen, and listen in on what they were doing. But when I transitioned out of the military, I still saw that in my peer group in that gentleman's community.
Mhm.
And so I said, where is that for, the females that are doing amazing things? I see some of the females that, they're entrepreneurs and they're writing books and they're doing great things. And so I just really wanted to bring us together. But it was important for me to not just look at military. I mean, that's easy, right? I could close my eyes and do something all military related. But I'm in industry now, I'm in government now, and I want to learn from those leaders as well. So it was important to bring together military, industry, and government, and then sit and have those fireside chats about the things that we just don't get to talk about. And so I'm excited. We already talked about kind of, imposter syndrome. And so that's going to be one of the subjects that we dive into, but also just affirmations, just, the positive, things about each other. I'm excited. One of the segments is going to be about moms and, just recreating your passion, your career path. What do you want to do in life? Maybe you followed your spouse all throughout their career, and maybe it's your time now. We're also going to talk about one of the subjects is why can't women be friends in work?
I love this. I'll
Yes.
say something. Yeah, because that's one of the things that this past retreat, and I got a little excited. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
oh, good. Yes.
Um, but this is one of the things that this past retreat really brought forward was that women need the support and connection of other women.
That's right.
And, you can transfer that skill anywhere, but, like, seeing these women come together who were strangers and they left, and I kid you not, we were up until midnight every single night, like, talking about all the things. It was really beautiful. That's
Good.
what we need in our lives again, and it's what empowers us to really connect in and support one another and know how to support one another. I think having the conversation of, like, what is it that you actually need in this season versus what I feel you need, it's really empowering, so I'm excited to hear that one too.
Yes, for sure. And we go to conferences all the time. And not to say that, women leadership conferences don't take place, summits, because they do. But a lot of times it's high level. I'm already established. I'm doing these, wonderful things and, have this big booming business. But what about the young lady that just has an idea and wants to get started? Just needs a little bit of encouragement. What about women? Because one of the subjects also is how to negotiate your salary. A lot of times we get offered, and we just say, okay, but stand your ground. So we'll talk about those things. And so it's really She Leads is about creating a safe space also to have those conversations because I'll just share really quick. I've been asked, are you going to live stream it? Can we, get, a videographer? And no, that's not what it's about. I want women to just really feel in a safe space to have these genuine conversations, ask the questions that you want to ask, and just create that environment. So She Leads DC is DC for now, but we are definitely hoping to take it on the road.
I know, I'm hoping they'll come to Charlotte. I'm like, "We can do this, Charlotte. Come on, guys. Like, let's rally." And just, why is all of this so important to you? Like, what makes you so passionate about all of this?
Again, I think just because I know there was a period where I needed advice. I needed help. I needed support. And so, you call yourself a leader all you want, that's great, but you also have to have humility. You also have to, part of being authentic is, having humility and admitting, there are times where I need help. There's times where, I have questions. And so just talking to different women and hearing their stories and, some of them already surrounded by maybe their leadership chain that's maybe not offering that information. And so that's why, I just really felt, something tapping on my shoulder saying, do you've got to do this. Besides having support from, other mentors saying, I think you should, and just go ahead and do it scared, a quote from a good friend of mine. And I love that. So I think just all of those things were the reason why and the passion that I have behind it. It's needed. It is absolutely needed. And it's across industry. It's not just military, it is across industry that we just need to have these conversations.
Absolutely. And I only have a couple more questions, but, like, where do you see women in leadership heading in the future? Like, where do you see us going?
Well, I think that if we continue, summits like this, and even if it's not She Leads, that we can get some momentum where we're having true breakouts and able to have just really good conversation. I think that, that can make a change and cause us to be more cohesive. I think that, for now, there's a lot going on, right, in the world. There's a lot that, you just cannot control. And so that is why it's important to remain true to yourself because, you know, if you feel like you're stagnant right now, it's temporary.
Right.
It is temporary, and you still have the ability to lead and control what you can control. So I see the future of leadership. There's some ebbs and flows, right? We will never be able to balance and say, okay, everything's perfect. All women are, making the same amount of income, as
Right.
our counterparts. There's an ebb and flow, but if you remain true to yourself and just continue to pour out mentorship, but also receive it, then I think that we'll see more cohesive generations to come and more cohesive leadership in the future for our women across government, industry, and the military.
Oh, I love this. And, out of our whole conversation, I always like to ask guests, what's the one thing you hope they take home today from this conversation?
So I think the one thing that I hope that you take when I talk about authenticity is to remain true to yourself and to honestly, make those connections. It's important to network and make those connections, but remain true to yourself, find your passion, and then find someone, an accountability partner that's going to help push you towards that goal. And I think that attending SheLeads DC is going to be the first step in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. I'm telling you, I am so pumped and excited. First of all, I get to go back to, where we lived for 3 years, which is
Oh yeah.
incredible. But
Mhm.
also just to get to meet you in person and to get to meet all the other leaders. But thank you so much for your time. If people want to connect with you, my dog's about to bust in.
Oh, all good.
That's so funny. Cameo appearance. Anyways, if people want to connect with you, where can they do so? What's the best way?
Yeah, so for sure, you can connect with me at info at authentic-fusion.com. You can also reach me on my website, www.authentic-fusion.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. And so you can find me under D Mosely, Deemosely.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for your time, and
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Candace.
I cannot wait to meet you in person. And everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation.